It's entirely possible that you've been manipulated perhaps without even realizing it. In today's hyper-connected world, where interactions with others are constant and often unavoidable, the boundary between genuine influence and covert manipulation can become dangerously blurred. People have motives, and while many interactions are benign or even beneficial, some harbor darker intentions. What happens when these interactions become insidiously manipulative? What happens when you find yourself an unwitting participant in a psychological game designed to undermine your autonomy? In this intricate and often hidden landscape of human interaction, understanding manipulation is not merely a survival skill, it's a necessity. This is more than a discussion, it's an eye-opening journey into the world of psychological warfare. Emotional manipulation, the invisible chess game. Imagine your emotions as pieces on a chessboard, each one representing a different aspect of your psyche: joy, fear, guilt, love. Now envision a skilled opponent quietly moving these pieces to their advantage, all the while ensuring that you remain unaware of the game. This is emotional manipulation, a subtle, often invisible force that can destabilize your mental equilibrium and leave you questioning your own judgment. Emotional manipulation is rarely blatant. It often disguises itself as concern, affection, or even silence, carefully designed to divert your attention from the true intention behind it. The manipulator's goal is to cloud your judgment, making you question your decisions and, ultimately, your self-worth. This can be achieved through various tactics, including guilt-tripping, fear-mongering, and playing on your vulnerabilities. Consider a scenario where a friend asks for a favor that feels uncomfortable or inappropriate. When you decline, they respond not with anger but with a sigh of disappointment, a non-verbal cue that carries deep, unspoken reproach. They might say, "I thought we were closer than that," leaving you feeling guilty for prioritizing your own needs. This is a classic example of manipulation through guilt, a tactic that leverages your sense of loyalty and decency to achieve compliance. The manipulator knows that you value the relationship and will often exploit this by making you feel as though your refusal endangers the bond. Another potent tactic is the use of fear. A manipulator might subtly insinuate that something bad will happen if you don't follow their advice or do what they ask. It's akin to walking through a dark forest, with only their voice guiding you, making you reliant on them for direction and safety. Fear-based manipulation often involves exaggerating potential dangers or consequences to create a sense of urgency or dependency. This tactic is particularly effective because fear is a primal emotion that can override rational thinking, pushing you into making hasty decisions to avoid perceived threats. Emotional manipulators also tend to erode your self-worth over time. They might use backhanded compliments or subtle criticisms to make you doubt your abilities or your value. For example, they might say something like, "You did well on that project considering your experience level," implying that your success was a fluke rather than the result of your hard work. This constant undermining can lead you to seek validation from the manipulator, further entrenching their control over you. Defending against emotional manipulation. The first step in protecting yourself from emotional manipulation is developing self-awareness. Understand your emotions as a gardener knows their plants. Recognize what makes you happy, sad, angry, or scared, and pay attention when these emotions are being manipulated. Keeping a journal can help you track your emotional responses to different situations and identify patterns of manipulation. Next, establish clear boundaries. This doesn't mean isolating yourself behind impenetrable walls, but rather creating doors that you control, doors that can open to genuine connections and close to unwanted influences. Boundaries are your personal limits, and they protect you from being coerced or manipulated. Practice saying no without guilt, and understand that it's okay to prioritize your well-being over someone else's demands. Balance is crucial in relationships. Healthy relationships are like a dance, where both partners move in harmony with mutual respect and understanding. If you find yourself constantly dancing to someone else's tune, it may be time to reassess that relationship. Ask yourself if your needs and boundaries are being respected. If not, it may be necessary to distance yourself from the manipulative person. Lastly, don't underestimate the power of honest and assertive communication. Confronting someone who emotionally manipulates you is never easy, but sometimes a simple "I feel this way" or "I'm not comfortable with that" can shift the dynamic. Use I statements to express your feelings and needs without accusing the other person. This approach can help diffuse manipulation attempts and establish clearer communication. Emotional manipulation is a dark art, but with awareness, clear boundaries, balance, and communication, you can protect your emotional well-being and make decisions that are truly your own. Logical fallacies, the mirage in the desert. In the realm of argumentation, logical fallacies are like mirages in a desert. They seem real and convincing from a distance, but upon closer inspection, they evaporate, leaving only the harsh reality of a deceitful argument. Logical fallacies are errors in reasoning that can make an argument appear sound when it is not. These fallacies are often employed by manipulators to distort reality, confuse the truth, and ultimately control the narrative. Logical fallacies come in many forms, but they all share a common purpose: to deceive or mislead. Whether used intentionally or inadvertently, these fallacies can derail conversations, obscure the truth, and lead to flawed conclusions. Understanding these fallacies is crucial because they often masquerade as logical arguments, making them difficult to spot. Common logical fallacies. One of the most common logical fallacies is the ad hominem attack, where instead of addressing the argument itself, the manipulator attacks the character or personal attributes of the person making the argument. For example, imagine debating a political issue, and rather than addressing your points, your opponent begins to criticize your background, education, or past mistakes. It's like someone throwing sand in your eyes to blind you to the real issue. Ad hominem attacks are effective because they distract from the argument's substance and shift the focus to personal issues. Another frequent fallacy is the hasty generalization, where a conclusion is drawn from a small sample or a single experience and applied to a whole group. It's like seeing one bird flying south and concluding that all birds must do the same. This fallacy often feeds on stereotypes and prejudices, creating fertile ground for discrimination and misunderstanding. Hasty generalizations are dangerous because they oversimplify complex issues and lead to erroneous beliefs and decisions. Then there's the slippery slope fallacy, which suggests that a small initial step will inevitably lead to a chain of negative events. It's like claiming that allowing your child to stay up late one night will lead to chronic insomnia and poor life choices. This tactic plays on our fear of potential future consequences, often exaggerating the likelihood and severity of those outcomes. Slippery slope arguments can be particularly persuasive because they invoke a sense of urgency and fear, pressuring you to avoid the perceived danger. The false dilemma, or false dichotomy, is a fallacy that presents two options as the only possibilities when, in fact, there are other alternatives. For example, someone might argue, either you support this policy or you don't care about the future of our children. This fallacy forces a choice between two extremes, ignoring the nuances and other viable options that may exist. False dilemmas are manipulative because they simplify complex situations and pressure you into choosing between limited and often undesirable options. Defending against logical fallacies. The best defense against logical fallacies is critical thinking. When presented with an argument, take a moment to step back and analyze it objectively. Ask yourself if the argument follows a logical sequence or if it relies on emotional appeals, personal attacks, or unfounded assumptions. Critical thinking allows you to see through the fog of fallacies and focus on the truth. Another strategy is to question the structure of the argument. Break it down into its components: the premise, the reasoning, and the conclusion. Does the conclusion logically follow from the premise? Is the reasoning based on sound evidence? By deconstructing the argument, you can identify any logical inconsistencies or fallacies that may be present. Don't rely solely on one perspective or source of information. Seek out multiple viewpoints, especially when dealing with complex issues. Different perspectives can help you see potential flaws in an argument and provide a more balanced understanding of the topic. This approach also helps you recognize when a false dilemma is being presented, as you will be aware of the other options that exist. Finally, when you identify a logical fallacy, don't be afraid to challenge it. Politely point out the flaw in the argument and ask the other person to clarify or provide additional evidence. This not only weakens the manipulator's position, but also encourages a more honest and constructive dialogue. Challenging fallacies requires confidence and assertiveness, but it's a crucial step in protecting yourself from manipulation. Logical fallacies are illusions of truth, but with critical thinking, careful analysis, and a willingness to challenge flawed arguments, you can navigate the desert of deceit and find your way to the oasis of truth. Gaslighting, the dark mirror of deception. Imagine looking into a mirror and seeing a distorted reflection, one that twists your features into something unrecognizable. Gaslighting is the psychological equivalent of that dark mirror. It distorts your perception of reality, making you doubt your memory, your experiences, and even your sanity. This form of manipulation is particularly insidious because it undermines the very foundation of your trust in yourself. Gaslighting is a tactic in which a person or entity, in order to gain more power, makes a victim question their reality. It works much like a dark magic spell, cast with words and actions, subtly but steadily warping your sense of what is true and what is false. The term comes from the 1944 movie Gaslight, where the protagonist is manipulated into questioning her perception of reality by her husband, who slowly dims the gaslights in their home while insisting that she is imagining the change in brightness. Techniques of gaslighting. One of the most common gaslighting techniques is outright denial. The manipulator will insist that something didn't happen, even when you have clear evidence that it did. For example, they might say, "I never said that," or "You're remembering it wrong," even when the words or actions are still fresh in your mind. This denial is often coupled with discrediting, where the manipulator dismisses your concerns as paranoia, overreaction, or mental instability. Over time, this constant undermining of your experiences can lead you to question your memory and judgment. Another technique is trivializing your emotions, making you feel that your feelings are not important or that you are overreacting. For instance, if you express hurt or frustration, the gaslighter might respond with, "You're being too sensitive," or "You're making a big deal out of nothing." This tactic diminishes your emotional responses and makes you feel guilty for having them, further eroding your self-confidence. Contradiction is another hallmark of gaslighting. The manipulator may contradict themselves, presenting conflicting information that leaves you feeling confused and off balance. For example, they might tell you one thing one day and the opposite the next, denying that they ever said the first thing. This creates a sense of unpredictability and chaos, making it difficult for you to trust your own perceptions and memories. Gaslighters often try to isolate their victims from friends, family, or anyone who might offer support. They may suggest that others don't care about you or that they are the only one who truly understands you. By cutting you off from external validation and support, the gaslighter strengthens their control over your perception of reality. Defending against gaslighting. The first step in defending against gaslighting is to trust your perceptions. Keep a journal of events and conversations documenting what was said and how you felt. This record can serve as a reality check when the gaslighter tries to distort your memories. Trusting your senses and emotions is crucial in maintaining your grip on reality. Seek validation from trusted friends, family, or a therapist. Share your experiences with someone who can offer an objective perspective. This external validation can help counteract the gaslighter's attempts to isolate you and make you question your reality. Don't be afraid to ask for help sometimes. An outside perspective is all it takes to see through the manipulation. Set firm boundaries with the gaslighter. Let them know that you are aware of what they are doing and that you will not tolerate it. This might involve limiting contact or ending the relationship altogether. Boundaries are essential in protecting yourself from further manipulation and regaining control over your life. Lastly, reaffirm your reality by consistently questioning the gaslighter's narrative and comparing it to your own experiences. Ask yourself, does this match what I know to be true? If the answer is no, trust your judgment. Remember that your perceptions are valid, and no one has the right to make you doubt them. Gaslighting is a powerful and damaging form of manipulation, but by trusting your perceptions, seeking external validation, setting boundaries, and reaffirming your reality, you can protect yourself from its corrosive effects and reclaim your sense of self. Conclusion: the power of awareness and resilience. The world of manipulation is a complex and treacherous one, filled with hidden traps and subtle snares designed to ensnare your mind and twist your will. But knowledge is power, and awareness is the first step toward defending yourself from these dark arts. By understanding the tactics of emotional manipulation, recognizing logical fallacies, and seeing through the deception of gaslighting, you arm yourself with the tools needed to maintain your autonomy and protect your mental well-being. Remember, the goal of manipulators is to control and undermine your sense of self. But with resilience, critical thinking, and a strong sense of self-awareness, you can navigate these challenges and emerge stronger and more confident. This journey of understanding and self-protection is not just about defense, it's about empowerment, reclaiming your power and living your life on your own terms. Are you ready to take control of your narrative and fortify your mind against manipulation? Let this be the beginning of a new chapter 1, where you stand tall, unshaken by the shadows of manipulation, and guided by the light of truth and self-awareness.